All right, welcome to the Young Turks. I am your host, Cenk Uygur. Jared Jackson produced it. Jesus Godoy directing. Everybody's looking to have some fun today on the program, so we're going to do it. Now, we're going to start this hour again with a little bit of hypocrisy on Glenn Beck's part. Not because I want to talk about Glenn Beck more, but because it's going to connect to another story of Democrats in the Senate and in the House and how everybody's pushing towards the same goal here. First, let's do the hypocrisy, though. Recently, Glenn Beck came out and explained how unbiased he is. In fact, with Katie Couric, he said that he was, happy that Obama won over McCain, that McCain would have been worse. Why he said that, no one knows. He didn't give an explanation. And given that Obama is a terrible socialist, Marxist, fascist, I don't know how McCain could have been worse. But he's going to explain now that no, he's nonpartisan. He's always been against Bush. So let's listen to clip number 5 here first.
President Obama's favorite line when deflecting criticism is, Bush, look at that guy, how much you hate him, huh? Bush had czars. Yeah, some of us were yelling back then, too. I was, not about the czars, per se, because they weren't crazy people. But I have the archives to prove how much I was yelling at that guy. But Bush's czars didn't have the radical ideology many of these people do. He'll say that Bush started us down the path towards socialism. And he'd be right by that. Bush started the crazy spending. He'd be right again. Bush started the bailouts. Yes, he did. Hated him for it.
Oh, you hated him for the bailouts. That's what I thought I just heard him say. Jerry, is that what you remember from when Bush was president? Or did Glenn Beck say something different? Let's check out the next clip and see.
We are in the middle of an all-out financial emergency. And emergencies have a way of really testing people in normal times, under normal circumstances. If you tune in to me, you know me as somebody who would tell the federal government exactly where to take their bailout plans and shove it right up there, you know what. But these are anything but normal times. I thought about it an awful lot this weekend, and while it takes everything in me to say this, I think the bailout is the right thing to do. The real story is the $700 billion that you're hearing about now is not only, I believe, necessary, it is also not nearly enough, and all of the weasels in Washington know it. The truth is that while $700 billion is an awful lot of money, it is not nearly enough to purchase all the bad assets out there because they're already after it. Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson knows this. So does Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke. So does the President. So does Chris Dodd, Barney Frank, Obama, McCain, all of them. They all know. When you start to realize that the term bad assets is soon going to apply from everything from credit card balances to your home equity loan to your car loan, you name it, that's going to add up. The real bailout number is probably going to be about 3 times higher. It's probably going to be at least $2 trillion or more.
So I was against the bailout all along, except for the part where you said you thought about it a lot over the weekend, which is a scary thought and an amusing thought, and decided that you were for the bailout. Of course, that's back when it was happening. Now, what's the larger point here? The larger point is that there's 2 different factors here. One is specific to Glenn Beck, and one is endemic to the Republicans and conservatives overall. The Glenn Beck thing is he has no ideology. He's just throwing stuff against the wall, right? He's like, I'm for the bailouts. You want to hear something else? I'm on Fox now. I'm against the bailouts, and I've always been against the bailouts. And he goes on Katie Couric's show. I'm against John McCain. Goes back on Fox. I'm against Barack Obama. Look, Jason Link has pointed this out on Huffington Post, did a very nice article about it, so I'm quoting it again. He says he does this time and time again. He goes on The View. And he's very nice to the ladies on The View and sometimes apologetic. Then he goes on his radio show and he's like, those hags, they should apologize to me. Because whichever audience he's in front of, he can't wait to ingratiate himself to it, right? I mean, as I look at these clips, I think, where's the chimp from his old DJ days when he did ads with chimps and stuff? Now, the larger point, though, as it relates to conservatives and Republicans is when the money was actually on the line, they wanted it to pass because they're in the pocket of the lobbyists for the banks, right? And they passed it, of course, as they were going to. And the guy who was pushing for that most was Hank Paulson, the Treasury Secretary for George Bush. That's absolutely indisputable. Now, look, there were other reasons why that bailout needed to be passed, and you can have, significant disagreements about whether it should have or shouldn't have. But I'll tell you what, I know where the lobbyists stood, and I know where the bankers stood, and ultimately, that's why the Republicans stood exactly in the same spot, and that's why Glenn Beck stood in the same spot. And then, but afterwards, what were they going to do? You think that they were going to remain ideologically consistent? No, of course they were going to pin it on the Democrats and blame it on them. And they've announced this on several occasions that that's exactly what they're going to do with health care reform. They're going to say, after it passes, and even if it's a bill that the healthcare industry loves, if it's got problems and they weakened it so that it would have problems, they're going to come back and say, it was the Democrats' fault. And that's the way it goes. And they are aided and abetted by the Democrats, the so-called moderate Democrats, so-called centrist or conservative Democrats. And that leads to, one of the larger stories from today, which is there's a story out that the same blue dog Democrats in the House and these so-called moderate to conservative Democrats in the Senate don't like Barack Obama's regulatory plan for Wall Street. Of course. You think the guys who are going to sell out on health care aren't going to sell out to Wall Street? No, they're looking to chop it at its knees. And they say, we're concerned. They're always concerned. Too much government regulation, too much involvement in the markets. Too much involvement in the markets? We haven't had nearly enough involvement in the markets. Look, sometimes as you're watching a basketball game, you'll yell at the refs, hey, let them play, because they're calling too many fouls, right? And sometimes you'll watch it and go, are you ever going to call a foul? I mean, they're killing each other out there, right? We're at the point where we're going, hey, is the government ever going to call a foul? Because these guys, they, bankrupted the system, took trillions of dollars, and now they don't want any rules, regulations, or any foul calls. And who's going to be there to help them? One, the Republican Party in its entirety. Number two, the conservative talk show hosts like Glenn Beck, and then they will rail against it later, when it goes badly. Three, these people that the media calls conservative Democrats or moderate or centrist Democrats that are in fact the corporatist Democrats who take the same money from the same lobbyists, from the same bankers, turn around and pretend to care about overregulation. No, they care about getting paid. That's what they care about. So if you think they butchered the health care plan so far, wait till you get a load of what they do to the financial industry plan. Now, in my opinion, the regulation that Obama is doing and proposing, I should say, is weak sauce enough, right? I mean, it's way weak sauce. We've discussed this on the show before. They say, all right, if you, one of the problems was that if you make a loan, but then you don't have any attachment to it, you can just sell it off to someone else. You have no incentive to make that a good loan. And that endangers the whole economy because people keep making bad loans just to get the money from the interest rate in the beginning and the fees from the beginning, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, if you make a loan, you should have some sort of financial attachment to that loan. I think that should be a significant attachment, 50% or so. So what was Obama's proposal? 5%. That's comical. It's cost of doing business, okay? Now that comical proposal is going to get a hatchet in the back from the Republicans and the corporatist Democrats. They're going to say, oh, no, 5% is way too much. No, government regulation. But think about it, break it down for a second, okay? Put aside the slogans of government regulation, et cetera. Think about that specific rule, right? Is it really too burdensome for the people giving loans to keep 5% of the loan so that they have an incentive to make sure that that loan is effective, it works, that it gets paid off, and that the whole financial industry is sound because of that? Of course it makes sense. The only way it doesn't make sense is 5% is way too little. But this is why on some days like today, as Martin Luther King would say, I feel discouraged. Because the powers that be, and I don't say that in a conspiratorial way, I say it in a very, on a micro level, person X gets paid by lobbyist Y, and they're going to do what lobbyist Y tells them to do. I get discouraged because in the end, these guys, they don't want to do any of it. They are motivated by the people who pay them, which is very logical. That's why the system is in a world of trouble. So, and I just, look, sometimes I don't know if I mentioned this too much, and I don't want you to take it as like, oh, my friends on Wall Street, they know everything. Not even close, right? But I have a couple of friends who work on Wall Street, right? And I had a conversation with a couple of them recently, and I said, so what do you think? I mean, they're motivated to make money, right? So it's not like they're going to be like, yay, regulation necessarily. It depends on what they're doing, et cetera. But they said, are you kidding me? There's been no regulation. So will this thing collapse again? Bet your bottom dollar on it. It's only a matter of when. It's could be a year, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. But if they don't fix the system and we don't have any reasonable regulation of Wall Street, of course they're going to go back to gambling because they make a tremendous amount of money from that gambling. And then if it crashes the corporations later or crashes the whole economy, what do they care? They already have the money and the bonuses. And the Glenn Becks of the world and the Republicans and the corporatist Democrats will tell you, no, 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 don't bother those poor bankers. Don't regulate them. That would be just far too mean. And then once you get angry that you've been rooked, Beck will turn back around and take advantage of that anger. It's a nice little racket that they got set up over there. Now, on another issue, somewhat related to that, we go over to talk with the Europeans on climate change. We're going to do that very soon in Pittsburgh, among other topics. And those talks are already, of course, well underway at the lower levels. And the number one problem we have on climate control for there to be an agreement is the United States of America. We are reluctant to sign off on the deals that the rest of the countries in the G20, among others, agree on. In fact, a large part of the world agrees on. Why are we reluctant? We elected for Barack Obama, right? We're going to get change. No, what they're saying is, well, and again, Rahm Emanuel was mentioned in this story. Who's surprised by that? The idea is we'll have a tough time getting that through the Senate. So can you just make climate change that isn't so much about climate change? Could we get a little less change, please? So, the global warming, yeah, we understand it's going to happen. If we could just slow it down a little less. Is that okay? Because we have senators that are bought by the corporations in America, and they don't really want to do it. So, look, don't get me wrong. I know it's not easy, okay? And I know that there are political realities, and I know these senators are bought, right? And that Obama's got to deal with that. It's not like Obama doesn't want climate change and doesn't want to address the problem of global warming. I think of course he sincerely does want to do that, in my opinion. But I think he's accepting the current reality and the current status quo far too much. Remember, I was in a debate with somebody on BBC over this yesterday, and I was on another program. And then, funny enough, one of our listeners sent me their blogs afterwards, where they say, oh, Cenk Uygur screams too much about Obama. You see, I'm a real moderate. I think the weak sauce Obama's bringing is perfect. Okay, congratulations on your moderation. But anyway, they say, Cenk doesn't understand this, that there are political realities. And one of them in the middle of the debate said, how can you charge that Obama doesn't want to bring change? Don't you remember what he ran his whole campaign on? I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why I supported his campaign. He ran the whole campaign telling us, remember the big word, change. We're going to get change in America. Did you think the change was going to be 5% change? If I thought that, I would have put serious thought behind Hillary Clinton. I'd have put serious thought behind Dennis Kucinich. I'd have put serious thought behind anyone that was going to give me a little bit more than 5% change, whether that's on climate control, whether that's on the banking, and whether that's in healthcare. And I hate to tell you this, but it's true. It's just simply not bold enough. Whereas Bush was way out of control, and you remember what the conservatives said? They said, we believe that we can make our own reality. Now that's far too far. Whereas right now what we have is the opposite problem. Whatever reality is, we will bow our head to it. If these politicians are all bought and sold, well then we'll play ball with them and allow them to keep taking money from the lobbyists if they'll just agree to please just a tiny bit of change. No, you're the president of the United States of America. Yes, you can change reality to some degree. I don't mean reality as in 2 + 2 = 4. I mean political reality, where you say we're not going to accept the status quo. Remember, that's what you ran on. Young Turks. All right, back at Rebel headquarters. No one inhales a fillet of fish like I do. During the break, like through a straw. All right, I needed a little bit of food supply. Anyway, let's get going, guys. Let's go back to crazy, hypocritical Republicans and conservatives. Come on, how's that for fun? All right, we go from one Fox News loon to another. We're going to get to the Republican senators in a second. We start with Bill O'Reilly. Remember we showed you that clip where he was in favor of the public option. He said it very clearly. Now, we should have known that there was something up because it was far too reasonable there. There had to be something wrong, right? Now, I don't know if he misspoke in the first place. That's entirely possible. Or if he said it because it made sense and then later realized, oh, damn it, I forgot. I'm supposed to be a conservative. I'm supposed to be against that. I don't know why it slipped out for the first time ever on Fox News and I said something that was true. But what is apparent now is that here comes the backpedal, 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 backpedal. And he's going to do it with Bernie Goldberg. Let's go to clip number 3.
Now, the internet is a safe haven for liars, and I want to get your opinion on this. Now the latest is that I am endorsing a public option in health care. Roll the tape. The public option now is done. We discussed this as where it's not going to happen. If the government can come up with a marketplace where a bunch of insurance companies come together to offer lower premiums, that's a good thing. All right, so obviously I was stating, we've run that clip before, that the government oversees private insurance companies. Go.
Bill, don't shoot the messenger, right? I'm your friend. I'm telling you this as a friend. You also said if the government can cobble together a cheaper insurance policy that gives the same benefits, I see that as a plus for the folks. Now, I know what you meant by that,
but
you could understand. You did.
Hands.
You absolutely did. But you're a big prize for the left.
But they lied about it.
Well, they've lied a lot worse about other things.
That's
what
true.
I'm saying is when you say if the government can cobble.
But it just drives me crazy that you can't have an honest dialogue in this country anymore. Bernie, I got to run. As always, very interesting.
You're right.
You know, sometimes, not half the time, not even close to half the time, sometimes Bernie Goldberg will come out and bust these guys. That's at least the second or third time he's done that. You got to give him a little bit of credit for that. And O'Reilly, I love it, man. I clarified. How did you clarify? We're going to show you his clarification in a second and whether he meant it or not. But before we do, real quick, safe haven for liars. I love how they do projection, man. That is exactly what Fox News is. So anyone who attacks them, they're like, safe haven for liars. Ironic. All right, so Bill, what did you say about the public option? We have the whole tape because he cut out the middle, if you noticed. That's why Bernie Goldberg was like, you didn't give the whole tape. Now let's look at the real tape of what O'Reilly said.
The public option now is done. We discussed this as where it's not going to happen. But you say that this little marketplace that they're going to set up, whereby the federal government would subsidize some insurance for Americans, that is, in your opinion, a public option.
Well, it has a massive new federal regulation, so you don't necessarily need a public option if the federal government's going to control and regulate the type of health insurance that Americans can buy,
I want that, Ms. Okachinko. I want that. I want, not personally for me, but for working Americans to have an option that if they don't like their health insurance, if it's too expensive, they can't afford it, if the government can cobble together a cheaper insurance policy that gives the same benefits, I see that as a plus for the folks.
Oopsie doopsie. If the government can cobble together a cheaper option, I see that as a plus for the folks. Oh, how could we have misinterpreted what you were saying? Well, I guess it's because we're a safe haven for liars. What's awesome is he cut that part out when he was presenting it on his own show. And then he calls other people liars for quoting him, which he does all the time. These media matters, sons of bitches. They're such liars for quoting me. Yeah, all right, Billo. Whatever keeps you, well financed, let's put it that way. Because you know the overlords came after that show and was like, O'Reilly, I don't know about this. Okay, you're going to have to clarify this later. And there's your clarification. So the world is back on its axis. Things are fine now. Fox News is back to supporting the corporations no matter what, right? And opposing Obama no matter what. Why did Obama not want to go on Fox News? What? They're totally fair and balanced. All right, now let's go from talk show hosts to elected officials. Let's go to John Boehner in the House first. Then we'll go to Cornyn in the Senate. John Boehner is, of course, the House Minority Leader for the Republicans. And he was on Meet the Press. And they pressed him on whether he'd called Obama a socialist. As you can imagine, we have tape of him denying it. And then we have tape of him saying it. So let's have fun. Clip number 1.
This question about the role of the government, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying this week, what she worries about in terms of the tone of debate is that it could lead to violence, as it did in the 70s. You know, there was anti-government violence in the 90s in Oklahoma City as well. How much of a concern is that? Do you share it, or do you think that that was of an overstatement on her part?
I'm not concerned about violence. I mean, I'm sure Speaker Pelosi was sincere in her concern. But let's remember something. The debate that we're in here is not just about health care. It's about the $1 trillion stimulus bill that was supposed to be about jobs and turned into nothing more spending and spending and more spending. It's about a budget with a nearly $2 trillion deficit this year and $1 trillion deficits for as far as the eye can see. It's a cap-and-trade system, this big, giant tax on the American people that this week we just find out the Treasury Department said will cost the average family $1,700 per year. You add to that this whole question of health care and the government option and government involvement. And Americans today are getting more news about what's happening in their government than they've ever gotten before. And Americans are genuinely scared to death. Scared to death.
But, Leader, don't they get even more scared when you got the head of the Republican Party sending out an email that, you know, to challenge the president and Democratic leaders for a socialist power grab? I mean, is that appropriate conversation? Do you really think the president's a socialist?
Listen, when you begin to look at how much they want to grow government, you can call it whatever you want. But the fact is
what do you call it, though?
This is unsustainable.
That's fine. Do you think the president's a socialist?
No.
Okay, well, the head of the Republican Party is calling him that.
Listen, I didn't call him that, and I'm not going to call him that.
I didn't call him that. Okay, let's see if he implied that. Let's go to clip number 2 and see how it turns out.
One day, after President Obama gave the speech about hope, Nancy Pelosi passed a bill that takes away hope for thousands of American kids here in D.C. To have a chance at this decent education. But that wasn't enough. The stimulus, the omnibus, and then yesterday what happens, the budget comes out. Well, the stimulus, the omnibus, the budget, it's all one big down payment on a new American socialist experiment. They're laying the groundwork for everything in these bills. Expanded welfare, government-run health care, green jobs, the works. They even want to pay your irresponsible neighbor's mortgage off for them.
A new American socialist experiment is what Obama and Pelosi are doing. Me call them a socialist? No. I was just saying that they're doing a socialist experiment. That sounds pretty close, doesn't it, John? And then his comments in the original clip drive me crazy, of course. So this stimulus was supposed to be about jobs. It turned into being about spending. Why are you going to create the jobs if you don't spend the money, right? And you didn't know when you were signing on to well, he fought the stimulus, to be fair to him, but that the stimulus was about spending money? Of course it is. That's how you create the jobs. And he says, Americans are scared to death. Who scared them to death? And who loves scaring them to death? Okay, well, I have the answer to that for you. It's Senator John Cornyn and the Senate Republicans. They sent out this mailer, this survey. Oh, these surveys kill me. Since I'm a former Republican, I get them every once in a while, and they're all push polling. They're hilarious. And they say, you know, are you afraid of what's going to happen? Is it time to panic? Send us money, right? So let me give you a sense of the questions that they asked us in this U.S. Senate Healthcare Task Force, as they called it, and in this survey. All right. Question number 23, and these are you concerned that healthcare rationing could lead to, 23, denial of treatment in case where the patient's prospects are deemed not good? Now, we're not saying that they're going to deny you treatment if they think you're really sick. We're just asking if you would be concerned if that were to be the case. Number 24, are you concerned that healthcare rationing could lead to a lottery system of determining who will get priority treatment? We're not saying they're going to do a lottery system and play dice with your health, but we're saying, would you be concerned if they did? See, none of this is in the bill, right? But if you think all of that is bad, well, wait till you wait for number 25. Are you concerned that healthcare rationing could lead to a quota system which would determine who would get treatment on the basis of race or age? So now it's bad enough when you scare the living crap out of senior citizens and you say, are you concerned that they might discriminate on you based on age? But race? I mean, at least I was used to the age nonsense. What does race have to do with this? And the use of the word quota, and they put it in quotes. Would you be concerned if they did quota on health care based on race? No, that's not at all racial. No. They're not stoking any fires there. Like what? Who said race? What do you mean? I mean, we've heard this quota language, of course, about affirmative action forever. And they say race in the question. Of course it's about race. And of course that's appealing to people saying, hey, you know what? They're not going to treat white people anymore. You think that the Republican surveys about, are you concerned that they're not going to treat black people anymore? I don't think that's the direction they're going. Okay? No, look, this question number 25, you can say anything you want about all sorts of other things. This question number 25 is absolutely, positively meant to appeal to white racists and scare them, because they're already scaredy cats. They're scared of everything, right? They're panicked. Like, oh my God, there's going to be a lottery system. Oh no, they're going to give the health care to black people. Oh no, I want my health care. I don't want to go get a quota to black people. And you know, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and she was asking, like, what is it? Do you think that this whole thing, was Jimmy Carter right? Was this whole thing about race? I said, no, I don't think it's about race. You know, the Republican Party has gotten crazier and crazier, and they attacked Bill Clinton for his cat, for his White House Christmas list. I'm being literal. They said he killed his friend Vince Foster. Okay, and the guys who said this are people like Roger Ailes, who now run Fox News, and they've only gotten crazier. So if it was Hillary Clinton, you think they'd have eased up on her? Hell no. You think it was John Edwards that had eased up on him? Hell no. They were going to bring down a rain of fire any way you slice it. But when they say things like, hey, you know, they're going to apportion health care based on quotas and based on your race, when they put up signs saying he's from Kenya, but most importantly, when they yell out, I want my country back, they are alluding to something, and that is their feeling of loss of power, loss of place in the world. They feel like, we used to run this place. What happened? And it's very subtle, and I don't think they even consciously think that. And you know, it's weird, but I don't even want to. It's not like I'm not saying that to blame them. And it's in some ways, I feel bad for them, because they think, as any parent does. For example, my dad got me this job, and I wanted to pass that job on to my son, but now I can't, right? And that really throws them for a loop. Now, they don't think, well, my dad gave me this job because they wouldn't let black people apply. You know what I'm saying? Or Hispanics or women or whatever it is. And, of course, they're not going to think that, right? And they don't think, hey, other people did not have the power that we had, did not have the position and the privilege that we had, and that wasn't right. Of course they don't think that. They think, I'm losing it. And it's really ironic, because what they're losing is a sense of entitlement. And it's ironic because that's what they charge liberals with all the time, saying, oh, they have a sense of entitlement. But the reality is, when they shout out, I want my country back, what they're really saying is, I hate that I've lost that entitlement that I used to have. And now, with Obama being elected president, no, black people and minorities are not going to get better health care than white people. They're not going to get the jobs more than white people. They're not going to have all of a sudden this massive advantage. is society eventually going, with or without Obama, towards a situation where everybody's treated a little bit more equally? Yes, and that's a good thing. But it doesn't sit well with people who are not treated equally, who used to be treated a little better than the others. And now that they're in that same boat, they don't like that boat. And there, I stop feeling sorry for them a little bit and say, sad day for you. Now, can you empathize with everyone who's been in that boat all along? And we're going to have to ask them that and begin that conversation a little later, right? But so far, they certainly don't get that. Instead, what they have is the anger, the burning anger. But before we do anything else, I want to give you a couple of other fun parts of this survey. The mailer also suggested that the legislative proposals being considered by Congress would give the federal government power to do these things. And Sam Stein is reporting on Huffington Post about this. Pick who is eligible for certain medical procedures. Pick your doctor for you. Again, it's always like, are you concerned that this healthcare legislation might do these things? Pick your doctor for you. Restrict certain medical procedures on the basis of age. Put strict price controls on medicine and drugs. Price controls. None of this is in the bill. Penalize you for choosing to see a private doctor. Seriously undermine private healthcare insurers who currently serve tens of millions of Americans. I get a load of that last one. It's 50% of the reason why I did this one. It's exactly the Will Ferrell ad, but they're being serious. Will Ferrell did an ad where they asked, shouldn't someone look out for the private insurance companies and the private insurance executives? And look at what they say. Are you concerned that this bill would seriously undermine private healthcare insurers who currently serve tens of millions of Americans? Don't we have to protect the insurers? What about the insurers? What about the private executives? They are comical folks. And don't think this is an isolated situation. By the way, they conveniently left out a lot of the names because they didn't want their fingerprints on it. But then when you trace it, you find out, yes, it's coming from Senator John Cornyn's office. In the corner of the Senator John Cornyn, but not a big deal, okay? Because they're embarrassed, of course, because this is terrible. But it's not the first time they've done it. In another mailer sent out a couple of weeks ago, here was this quote in the Republican mailer. It has been suggested that the government could use voter registration to determine a person's political affiliation, prompting fears that GOP voters might be discriminated against for medical treatment in Democrat-imposed health care rationing system. Does this possibility concern you? Always with the question of, are you concerned about this? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it did, it would be concerning, wouldn't it? These are the guys you're fighting. I mean, come on, really. Obama's going to put together a proposal where he says, oh, you're a Republican? No, you don't get any health care, right? It would be comical if people didn't take it seriously. If it was a comedy skit, it would be great, okay? But they take it seriously. And these are the guys that you're going to get bipartisan compromise with? No, you can't. No one could possibly believe that. While these guys hit under the belt every single time, we're still trying to have tea parties with them. Young Turks.